right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with Bob Rose. How you doing tonight, Bob?
Alan, the only thing I can think of when I listen to our intro music now is it sounds like a touching scene at the end of a 1980s romance movie.
I'm gonna have to get thank you for being a friend from Golden Girls on here, so
Yeah.
that'll fit well. Well, after a week off, as expected, all the news sort of came to fruition this weekend, and of course Monday and Tuesday, because the league year officially starts tomorrow at 3:00.
Mhm.
But the tampering allowed period began on Monday. Oh, they're just trying to get with the NBA. They really are, because they figure with the league year starting on Wednesday, the last thing they want is a whole bunch of stuff happening Friday news dump at 4:00. They want to get people talking.
Yeah.
So the first big news, which if you've been paying attention to this show, if you've been paying attention to what we've been saying on social media, really wasn't much news. But people were pissed anyway. The restructuring of Derek Carr. They cleared about $30 million in the cap, but they guaranteed Carr's money. So he's still going to get his money. He got his money, and he now has a $69 million cap figure next year. But the way it's structured, if they cut him and designate him as a post-June 1st cut next year, they get $50 million of that back.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than take a $40 million or $50 million hit this year, they take a $19 million hit next year in dead money. Is that how you saw this?
Yeah, and that's pretty much how it's going to play out. Alan, unless Derek Carr has a Baker Mayfield type of career revelation, with the Saints this coming year, he's not going to be on the roster in 2026. We have been saying that. John Hendricks has been saying that. Brendan Boylan has been saying that. Hell, folks, the almighty Nick Underhill has been saying that. And we've also all been saying since day one of the offseason that this is what was going to happen with Derek Carr. I know you Carr haters, you ABCs, anybody but Carr people. You didn't want this to happen, but this was always going to be the way it played out. Because the other scenarios, the other scenarios make the Saints a far worse team than what they are with Derek Carr.
Yeah, and that ultimately it boils down to, you really could not function this year without either A, doing what they did with Derek Carr, or B, restructuring everybody you can imagine and pushing all their cap figures out into 2027, 2028. Because what hasn't been reported very much is that the Saints are currently projected to be $56 million under the cap next year.
Mm-hmm.
And another 100 and something million under the cap in 2027. So you're going to get your cap space. Now, the deals that we have made for Chase Young, the deals that we made for Justin and Jawan Johnson, and now Justin Reed, we're going to talk more about those in a minute. But basically, those deals are going to affect that, how much you're under the cap. But the point is, you're not going to be 50, 60, 70, $100 million over the cap in 2026. So you kind of had to figure out a way to make it functional for you as a team. And you're going to say all the right things like, oh, yeah, Derek Carr is our guy. Derek Carr we can win with. Derek Carr is this, Derek Carr is that. And I think that's the other thing people are latching on to. They're like, we're running back the same damn team. We're afraid to make changes. And you and I have been saying, and thank you, Anna, you and I have been saying, you can't make a change until you have Derek Carr's replacement on the roster. And this is where I want to get your opinion. Look at the quarterback moves that we have seen already.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Fields going to I just forgot who he went to.
Jets.
Jets. Justin Fields going to the Jets, $20 million. Geno Smith leaving the Seahawks, going to the Raiders. The Seahawks taking Sam Darnold. These are all teams that are, well, not the Seahawks, but the Jets and who did I just say? I got so many things going on. Yeah, Jets and Raiders, both in the top 10 drafting. So they're in position to get a quarterback, but they're taking a veteran instead.
Mm-hmm.
What does that say about what they think of outside of Cameron Ward? Those other quarterbacks, especially Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, you just pick your guy. So yeah, it to me, it's like if you get rid of Carr, you're not getting a veteran because those other teams are going to outbid you because you got that dead money. You don't have the money to sign even a Justin Fields because you don't have $20 million.
Mm-hmm.
So you were going to basically do a Saints 1990 situation, going in with a John Fourcade and Spencer Rattler, and hoping you can draft a guy that is good enough to make your team. But these teams that are desperate for a starting quarterback don't believe in those guys.
Yep.
So
yep, and not only that, but we've been talking for weeks, months now. That if the ABC people got their wish, cars thrown onto the street, and the Saints bring in a Sam Darnold or a Geno Smith or a Kirk Cousins or an Aaron Rodgers or a Justin Fields or a Russell Wilson. You look at what Darnold got from the Seahawks, $33 million a year. Russ Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, they aren't going to get that, but it's going to be somewhere in between that and what Justin Fields got. The 15, 20 million. With the Jets. So what you're doing is you're still paying for Derek Carr, whether he's on the team or not. And now you're bringing in another guy who is his equal or worse for at least the same amount of money. So you've now doubled, if not tripled, your quarterback salary for the same guy. And I would have never understood that logic from day one, and that's why I never thought it was going to happen.
And the response people are saying, and I'm sure they're yelling at the TV screen right now, that's where you just roll with Spencer Rattler, and whatever happens with him. He could be your answer. He could be a bust, and then you just go 0-17, and you're now in number one selection to take the kid from Drew Allard from Penn State, because Arch Manning's not coming out in 2026. He's coming out in 2027. It's just the way the Mannings are. He's not going to play 1 year of college football and then go pro. He's going to want to play at least 2 years unless Texas wins it all. Mm-hmm. And even then, I just can't see him playing 1 year at Texas as a starter.
Now, you bring up a great point. And what if Arch Manning comes out and wins the Heisman Trophy this year? Well, only one other person has won consecutive Heisman trophies. So, the Mannings are nothing if not about legacy. So this is a chance to stamp another legacy situation. And I know we're jumping way ahead here. But back to your point about Rattler, the Rattler hive might still get their wish, because the way this Derek Carr situation is now structured contractually, if Carr comes out and lays an absolute egg in the first 4, 6, 8 games, you can cut him at that point and then turn to Rattler and then legitimately see what you got, without the other way to go would have been, like you said, you still cut Carr, and you have to restructure everybody else on the roster just to have salary cap space,
Mhm.
and roll with Rattler with no players. Well, now
Yeah.
if you have to turn to Rattler because Carr sucks, and this is worst case scenario, but if that plays out, then at least you were able to sign some players. At least you were able to, Kellen Moore, to bring in some of the offensive guys that you wanted, or the defensive guys that Brandon Staley wanted. So I mean, for the Rattler people, this still could play out just the way you want it to.
And Carr's been hurt the past 2 years.
Hmm.
He didn't finish last year. He got hurt several times. Now he did miss. I don't think he missed a game last year, but he did get knocked out of at least three of them. Um, so and that takes me to one other thing. But I want to finish this thought off first. Here's a worst case scenario. Let's say, for the sake of argument, Carr does suck. He gets benched or he gets hurt. Rattler plays. The Saints aren't winning. They didn't win with Carr. They're not winning. Then they pull a Philadelphia Eagles when they had a shot at getting O.J. Simpson back in 1969. You're terrible. People hate watching the games. Then they realize we could have the number one overall pick. So now we're happy. We want them to lose. And the Saints start winning these meaningless games. Sorry, Jim Moore. I know Ron Swoboda said that to you, and you got an earful for it. But you start winning these meaningless games, and all they do is push you down in the draft. And let's say you win 5 games again. You go on a 4-game winning streak to close out the season because the defense finally clicks and they start winning games by getting the turnovers and stuff like that. And now you have 5 wins. And we saw 5 wins this year got you to 9. Let's say next year 5 wins get you to 11th place, or you're picking 13th because the league is just garbage. You screwed yourself.
Yep.
Because Rattler now you have the argument. Well, maybe Rattler's finally figuring out and really is the guy because I can't go get the guy I want. Then we're having this conversation again.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm just throwing different scenarios out there because tanking is very hard. And even when you tank, you can still screw up your tank.
Yeah.
And let's say you don't screw up your tank, you could still pick the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Or the guy that you think is the guy you want either gets hurt a lot or really isn't as good as you thought he was. All those things. So, I mean, it's just... you're putting so much faith into the football god's hands.
Yeah.
At that point, I don't know if I couldn't do that. I just couldn't.
Well, no, and anybody, and I've said this what feels like hundreds of times. Mm-hmm. Anybody that wants to tank, you've either never played a competitive sport in your life, or you have and you sucked at it. Because that's just not what competitors do. The guys in that locker room, whether it's coaches or players, don't say, hey guys, let's lose our last 6 games, or let's not give a shit about our last 6 games. Maybe some owners throughout the league are thinking that because they see dollar signs with a number 1 overall draft choice kind of situation. Mm-hmm. But the people that are responsible for the day-to-day winning and losing of a football team or any sports organization, that's not the way any of them think. And if they do, they're not in the business for very long. It's just it's as simple as that. But as a fan, welcome to the life without a franchise quarterback, because that's what life is.
Yeah, and as I keep telling people too, and because we don't know, but if you look at where a lot of these quarterbacks gone, including the 2 that were in the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts was a second-round pick. Patrick Mahomes, of course, was picked 10th overall, not number 1 overall. So, I mean, there's situations where you have guys that you could select, but they're not number 1 overall. They're just later in the draft. There's the number 1 overall pick doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the best quarterback of this draft. It just doesn't work that way. I don't know. I feel like I say this over and over and over again, and people still have it in their head. The higher the draft pick, the better the player, or because they look at it as, I get to pick anybody I want. I don't have to worry about anybody taking the guy I want. But the guy you want may not be the best guy.
Yep.
So I don't know. Derek Carr is Derek Carr, and the other part I wanted to bring up is Derek Carr's reaction to all this. He apparently did not want to take a pay cut. He wasn't even very motivated or excited about being a Saint anymore. That he doesn't want to go through a rebuild. That he just is like, look, either pay me or cut me. And that didn't sit well with fans because they want to cut him anyway.
Right.
So they're like, yeah, I'm going to get you the hell out of Dodge. So it's yet another reason for fans to go, man, F this guy. You know, I'm just sick of hearing him. I'm sick of looking at him. I don't care about the cap. I don't care about his dead money. I'm sick of him. You know, and I get that, but it's a marriage of inconvenience right now.
Yeah, and look, if Carr really did feel like I absolutely don't want to be here, he didn't have to agree to the restructure. That's what a lot of fans don't realize, is that when these contracts get restructured, both team and player have to agree to it. The Saints have been fortunate over the years to have such good locker room guys like your Cam Jordans, your Demario Davises, your Drew Breeses, Marcus Colstons, that would accept restructure after restructure after restructure. But my point is, if Carr really didn't want to be here, he could have forced the Saints' hand and saying, nope, this is my contract. You're either gonna you're gonna pay it to me in this language one way or another, whether I'm on the team or not. Yeah. It maybe in his eyes, if he didn't want to be there, in his eyes, that would have forced the team to move on from him, in a Russell Wilson type of way over in Denver. That's why the fans just say, Carr doesn't want to be here. No, I wouldn't go that far. He obviously doesn't want to be around that city right now, and who could blame him with the way a lot of you people are talking about him. You people that aren't keyboard tough guys, and I'm not talking about Bayou Blitz or Under the Dome members necessarily, because you guys have been with us from the start, but y'all know the type of Facebook people that I mean. The keyboard tough guys that say, if I saw this guy and I saw that guy, I'd do this and that. No, you wouldn't. But the people that truly hate Carr, that would say nasty things to his face, to his family's face out in public. Do you blame him for not wanting to be in town for the Super Bowl? I mean, I say again, just like I did at the time, that's a bad look. But given the way the things went down last season, I also don't blame him from a personal standpoint.
Well, yeah, he couldn't win for losing, in my opinion.
Right.
Even if nobody actually physically confronted him, the fans would be saying, boy, I sure hope he's in Super Bowl town for the Super Bowl looking for a trade. He should be talking to all these guys about getting a trade. Get his ass out of here. Showed up for Mardi Gras, and they'd be like, oh, look at this Chipotle-loving SOB, F him and his family, the whole bit. He couldn't win. He could not win. He could save a puppy from drowning in Bayou St. John or being eaten by an alligator, and the comments would have been, "I wish the alligator would have eaten him." I
Yeah.
mean, that's just where it is at this point. And
yeah, or how dare he put his throwing arm at risk trying to save that puppy?
Yeah.
Drew wouldn't do that. He would, he would protect his throwing arm for the season, and blah 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 blah. You've seen it.
Yeah, I know, and it's so he's got the Dennis Allen stink all over him, and that's the number one thing. He was Dennis Allen's guy. He's got the Dennis Allen stink, and his personality is such that he's just not. He's not that. He's a Texan, but raised in California kind of person. So he's just wired differently.
Yeah, and he does need better PR. Frankly, he has come across as a dick more often than not.
Absolutely, and it's just not going to vibe with the fans. And then you throw the fact that they're losing on top of it. I mean, if he was from Louisiana, if he went to LSU, if he would just have some kind of tie to this area, people would be more forgiving of it.
Yep.
Because he's very similar to Bobby Hebert in the way he carries himself and everything else. It's just, and his stats and everything. But Bobby Hebert was a local kid who fans embraced him, and he embraced the fans because he would play up the Cajun, good old boy, man, I just want to win too. I mean, that kind of thing. But he would yell at Alonzo Hill. He'd yell at his blockers, and you look at Carl Smith, like, what the hell kind of play is that? You just had me run, that kind of thing. And he'd deflect blame off of himself and put it on other people. But we just overlooked that. The worst that people were towards Bobby Hebert was the 1990 season where he held out all year. And when he came back, the fans really divided. They wanted Steve Walsh to start in 1991. And Hebert came out to boos in that Seattle game. I know. I was there. Where's John Butler? I was there, though. I heard him. They were booing him when he came out there. And it all changed with that game-winning touchdown pass to Floyd Turner at the very end of the Saints' last possession. The Saints actually won because Pat Swilly knocked out Dave Craig, broke his thumb on his passing arm, and they had to go with Jeff Kemp, Jack Kemp's son. And this is unbelievable, but it's true. John Casey, who ended up kicking for the Saints in 2011, was a rookie kicker in 1991, and he missed a field goal that could have tied the game and forced it into overtime. So, yeah, it was Carr would have to have games like that, where he pulled the game out, and it was because of his heroics or his play, and fans would start turning, because it started last year with the two games to begin the year. People started to say, okay, where's that Derek Carr apology form I want to fill out and that kind of stuff, but then it got all squandered once the team started losing. All right, enough of Derek Carr. Let's talk more happy stuff. The Saints signed, and I'm going to try this new function here. The Saints signed Chase Young. It was 3 years, $54 million. How do you feel about this signing?
Middle of the road. I still believe that the Saints need an edge rusher. I would still like them to draft an edge rusher, with the 9th overall pick. And here's why: the people, the Chase Young haters that were calling Chase Young a bust halfway, 2/3 of the way through this year, because he's not getting enough sacks. The people that were calling Chase Young a bust before he got to New Orleans, the fans in Washington, the fans in San Francisco, or the people that were openly questioning his effort in all three places. I started to watch his film a lot closer, well before the end of the season, and the realization occurred to me. I'm like, Chase Young more, it gives the effort that you want.
Mhm.
Has the athletic tools that you want. But here's the thing: Chase Young is not a finisher. You mentioned Pat Swilling. Pat Swilling was a finisher.
Mhm.
Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor. You look at now, now the Watt brothers, Khalil Mack in his prime. Micah Parsons. Those guys are finishers. These are guys that offensive coordinators game plan to try to contain, not stop, contain. These are guys that keep quarterbacks up late at night trying to figure out how to get the ball off in X number of seconds before I get my head taken off. Chase Young is not that guy. And that's no crime. The only crime in that is that he was the second overall pick, and when you're the second overall pick, you have to be that guy or else.
Yeah.
And that's why I say the Saints still need an edge rusher. That doesn't change my opinion at all. I do like that they brought him back. Of the two big name free agents, so I personally would have much preferred them to keep Paulson Adebo. It didn't work out that way. I was hoping that they would keep at least one of the two to not eliminate the need, but reduce the need at one of those positions. They chose to go with edge rusher, and given the scheme that we expect Brandon Staley to run, a primary 3-4 base, Chase is going to be more of a stand-up pass rusher than he was at any other point in his career when he played in 4-3 schemes. And that kind of fits into Chase Young's wheelhouse. So I do expect a better performance, but I stand by what I said before about he's just not a finisher. If you put a finisher on the other side, a Cam Jordan in his prime, a Watt, somebody like that, all of a sudden you're going to see those pressures that Chase Young is racking up without the sacks. You're going to see a lot more of them convert to sacks because he's going to see more single team blocking and everything like that. So I don't mind the signing, but I'm not going to sit here and say, the Saints are going to go into this draft. They don't need an edge rusher now. Bullshit, because I feel just as strongly as I did before the signing.
And look, I'll be honest with you. The Saints had nothing. If Chase Young would have left, what do you have to put there to replace him? So you got to sign somebody. And 3 years, $54 million sounds a lot, but you look at what they were signing people for that were defensive ends and could be stand-up edge rushers. Chase Young is still a relatively inexpensive piece with the idea that, look, I'm going to upgrade this position in the draft if I can. But that's a lot to hope for that lasts to 9. You're not going to get Abdul Carter, but if you want to get the kid from Georgia, if you want to get the kid from Tennessee, there's a real possibility they're not going to be there at 9. So you need to have somebody so you're not forced to take an edge rusher that is really probably ranked in the 20s at 9. And I still, I'm hoping, I'm praying that if the guys that they really, really like at 9 are all gone, that Mickey Loomis finally does the trade down. Even Tyler Warren is up there, but Gentry's gone, McMillan's gone, the edge rushers are gone. That he calls up his old buddy Sean and says, Sean, I know that those draft picks will burn a hole in your pocket. I'll take your 20th pick, your second round pick, and your 4th round pick, and you can get Tyler Warren. Come on, buddy, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. But yeah, I would make that call because it's also about volume. You want to have more picks. If I'm picking 20th, now it kind of opens up a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier for me to say, look, I got Chase Young on the side. I can get a guy who is going to be a little bit more developmental, but ready to play maybe next year. And I might be able to put Chase Young as an end and an odd front or maybe a two gap defensive end if I think he can handle it. So, yeah, Brian, we're going to talk about that in just a second because this is a common theme here. Yeah, I know. But if you gave me a bunch of picks, I'm taking the picks because I think I can get more talented players in the middle part of that draft, the bottom half of the first and the top and middle part of the second round. If I can get 3 picks instead of 2 in those 2 rounds, I can fill in more holes. I can get me another corner. I can get me a safety. I can get me an offensive guard, that kind of stuff. So, so Brian brings up the point I wanted to go to next. We sign this guy, 3 years, $30 million. That's a lot of money for a guy who is a tweener, not really a difference maker at tight end. Tyler Warren is clearly a difference maker at tight end. They've got a few difference makers in this draft. Why did we re-sign this guy?
Because they need tight ends. That's the short answer. Kellen Moore has been able to do a lot with the tight end position with athletic tight ends, in Dallas with the Chargers and definitely with Dallas Goedert. Goedert was probably the most physically gifted tight end he's coached. But even the Juwan Johnson haters, and I agree, with you, Brian, that he's inconsistent at best. But he has those tools. You forget that this guy hasn't always been a tight end. He's been a tight end for 3 years. He's not a natural inline guy. What he is a matchup problem. We talk about Chase Young not being the guy. The defense's game plan to offense's game plan to stop. Juwan Johnson is not going to be the T.J. Hawkinson, the Sam Laporta, the Travis Kelce, the Dallas Goedert. The guys at defensive coordinators look at him and say, Juwan's going to be a problem, for us this game. So, those of you, and I count myself in this, those of you who want Tyler Warren and would love to have Tyler Warren, or like Allen and myself both have been screaming for a tight end, in the second round for years now. That doesn't necessarily mean re-signing Johnson doesn't necessarily mean that the Saints won't do it. Just like with Chase, if you get a difference maker opposite Chase, you're going to see those numbers go up. If you get a Tyler Warren, or I'm a huge fan of Arroyo from Miami, Florida. You LSU guys that want Taylor, the Loveland from Michigan. You get any of those guys, and Moore is going to build a part of his offense around them. And doing so, all of a sudden, you have a number 2 linebacker on Juwan Johnson, or you have a big safety on Juwan Johnson. That's where he's a matchup problem, because of his athleticism, because of the route tree that he can run being a former wideout. Is he a number 1 tight end or a consistent Pro Bowler? No. But the logic behind signing him, I can see it. And don't look at that $30 million saying, oh my God, the Saints just paid $30 million for a number 2 tight end. No, the Saints paid the Saints paid $6 million in salary cap this year to a guy that can be a matchup problem if they find a complement to him. That's the way I'm looking at it.
And the reality too is a lot of people have forgotten that Foster Moreau tore his knee up in the final game in the fourth quarter, the final game of the season against Tampa. We kind of forgot about that, but yeah, he got injured on the sideline. Right there on the sideline, he got carted off, and he had to have surgery right after that. So if it takes a year to recover from ACL surgery, the only other tight end you have on the roster, I think, is Dallas Hawker. So you really don't have any tight ends at all. And the Bengals re-signed Gesicki, so you couldn't get him. So
I was heartbroken about that one.
yeah, I mean, so I get it, but it's also you needed a body again.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't preclude you from getting Tyler Warren. It doesn't preclude you from getting the kid from LSU, the kid from Michigan, whoever it is, Iowa, Luke Lachey. It doesn't preclude you from getting any of those guys. It just keeps you from going. Like last year, we were all going, "Oh God, please let Flocka fall. Please let him fall. Please let him fall." And you see these offensive linemen come off the board, and you're going, "Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit!" And thank God the Atlanta Falcons took Penix, because, there was a real problem. We might have had to take another player or reach for an offensive lineman because we needed a left tackle that badly. 9 is a good spot to have some choices, but at the same time, you also don't want to. Oh, look, there's a first round bust right there on my TV screen. That was the Saints rookie receiver from Purdue, the same year that Walter Payton got drafted, and he caught 2 touchdowns his entire career with the Saints. But
he was fast as hell, though.
Oh yeah, all world speed, all neighborhood hands. Yeah, but anyway, like I said, there's some. It gives them some options. It gives them a little bit of protection, but clearly the draft is where the upgrading talent is going to come from for both Chase Young and for Juwan Johnson, which then takes me to our next guy. We got to have a Gottschall in New Orleans. I mean, and this guy here, it only costs you a 7th round pick, so it's relatively free. He's just a body, but he is a guy to throw in the mix because we do need desperately, as Calvin always says, give me a big ass guy who can tie up some people. This is your first chance at getting somebody big to fit and play run defense for you as you convert to a 3-4 defense. So the question becomes now, what do you know about this player and what can he do for you?
Well, the first thing I said when they hired Staley, or when it was clear that Staley was going to be the guy, the first thing out of my mouth was, who's going to play nose tackle? Because they don't have one on the roster. I know Kalen Saunders is a big ass boy, but he's not a nose tackle. Ridgeway spot guy, but not a down in and down out nose tackle. They went out and got one, because that's what Gottschall is. He is just a big, wide body, the kind of guy that I was yelling for last year. I love Bresee. I do. I love Bresee. But he's not. He's your inside pass rusher. They don't have a big bodied run stuffer. They don't have a Norman Hand. They don't have and I'll use this because the Pittsburgh Steelers were the perfect 3-4 defense for years and years and years. A Casey Hampton. You look at the Buccaneers now, a Vita Vea. They don't have a guy like that. And I'm not saying Gottschall is Casey Hampton, Vita Vea. They are perennial Pro Bowlers. I'm not saying Gottschall is that, but Gottschall is the kind of guy who will just plug gaps just with his mere presence and leverage. That's a start, because they sure as hell weren't doing that the last 2 years. And I know a lot of you guys, were praying Mason Graham would fall or trade up to get Mason Graham. No, you're running the wrong system for that. If you were still running the 4-3, I'd say absolutely trade up and go get Mason Graham, because Graham and Bresee in the middle, that's going to cause problems. No, you have to consider. This isn't Madden, guys. You can't just grab the big names and throw them on the roster and all of a sudden you're a Super Bowl contender. You have to have guys that'll fit your system. Gottschall fits what you want to do system-wise. I agree with you, Alan. He's just a guy. I mean, he's not going to make any Pro Bowls. He's not going to make any highlight stops or anything like that. But he's going to clog up that middle and maybe give some more one-on-one opportunities. For Brissy, Cam, Chase Young, Granderson on the outside. It still wouldn't. I still expect them to bring in another bigger guy, probably in day 3 of the draft. I know some of you are in love with Deion Walker from Kentucky. I'm looking at the guy. I think his name's Stackhouse, from Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia. That is a friggin' brick wall. And he'll be a day 3 pick. But yeah, I mean, Godshaw is exactly the kind of guy that Brandon Staley needs to just fill up the middle of that defense. To give him some options on the outside. Because you don't want to plug Brian Brissy in the middle there, because that nullifies what Brissy can do best. You want guys like Godshaw. Now Kalen Saunders is going to play some nose tackle. It gives you a couple interchangeable pieces here.
Well, and that was going to be one of my questions here, because Flavor Dave asked a great one. Does Brissy fit the new system? I think he does, but at the same time, they're also going to be running a hybrid systems. They're still going to run big nickel. They're still going to have 4-man fronts, but it might be 3 defensive linemen and an edge in that 4-man front. So Brissy has a role on the team. I don't know if he fits as a 2-gap defensive end, like a pure 3-4 scheme. So it's going to be tricky to get that. And that's what this vibing with the Johnsons is saying here. We may see Brissy on the edge this season. I think you're going to see him as a tackle in a odd 4-man front with a light edge rusher on the weak side. And you're going to see him, and I know it's a lot for a first-round pick, but you drafted him when you were running a pure 4-3, and he does need a big body next to him to tie up blockers. He's not Leroy Glover needing a Norman hand, but he needs a Norman hand next to him, to get him loose. So I'm curious to see if he would make his 3-4 end. And yeah, Calvin, believe me, I was screaming for Sweat.
So was I.
I kept watching Sweat drop in the draft, and I'm going, oh, if we're going to trade back into this draft to get a guy, get him. And I'm watching him at Texas all the time. So I think Brissy, they may try him as a 2-gap defensive end, but I think in the beginning it's going to be more odd man fronts where they run that hybrid 4-man front defense. And that's, again, why you brought in a Chase Young. That's, again, where a Brissy would fit. You can still have a big nose tackle in there. It's going to be interesting to see who shakes out in these defensive linemen, because even though Shepard and Saunders came back, I don't think their jobs are secure. Neither one of them. I think if they get the right draft picks, you can see both those guys gone.
Yep, just like we talked about with Carr. Carr stinks up the joint. They've already restructured the contract, so they already have the finances set up the way they want it to be set up, whether the guy's on the roster or not. That's the same exact setup that they have now with Saunders and Shepard. I can't see both of them gone because, again, you need a rotation up front.
Yeah, absolutely.
To keep those guys fresh. But if you see, say, a day 3 nose tackle selected and he sticks on the roster, if Christian Boyd, who they drafted last year, who I said at the time, he's more of a prototype nose, 3-4 nose than he is a 4-3 defensive tackle. If he starts to progress, if they draft an edge rusher in the first or second round, all of a sudden, Nathan Shepard, Kalen Saunders are sweating a little bit, no pun intended. Because Brandon Staley is going to find a spot for Brian Brissy on this defense. Brandon Staley is going to find a spot for Carl Grant. I don't think enough people other than myself are asking, where's Carl Granderson's fit in this defense? I wrote about it the other day. He's not a stand-up pass rusher down in and down out. So that's another guy, just like with Bresee, like you said, Alan. Granderson and Bresee are two guys that they're gonna mix and match their fronts. They're not just gonna line up in the old New York Giants 1980s 3-4 front, where these are your 3 front linemen, these are your 4 linebackers, and oh, by the way, one of them is Lawrence Taylor. Just try to stop us. No, they're gonna mix and match these guys to try to find their best matchups. Chase Young is a stand-up on the outside. Bresee is a 3-4 end. Carl Granderson mixing and match. 'Cause I guarantee you, Carl Granderson is not dropping into coverage or anything like that.
If y'all wondering what I keep looking at, that's what I'm looking at. I got my little draft book. So Stackhouse from Georgia is possibly a day 3 pick that you could see them putting in there. And I think that's a very real possibility, Calvin. I think he is, especially in the decision not to pursue it, Adebo. They sat there and looked and said, am I going to pay a lot of money for Adebo and probably lose Chase Young when I could draft Will Johnson instead and keep Chase Young, and I got now another rookie, and I can play a rookie and a second-year guy outside and move Alontae Taylor back to the slot where he seemed to do the best. That's all possibility. And that's the other reason why you weren't going to see a true 3-4 defense like you saw with the Dome Patrol era. Teams don't play 2 wide receivers anymore. They play 3 wide as a base. They play 4, 5 wide. So you don't want 4 linebackers out there dealing with that. You want, and I think both those guys are real possibilities. Asante Samuel Jr. and Beckham, Becton. I think both of those guys are real possibilities over there. So, I don't know, Brian. I'm not sold on Shadur Sanders. I just feel like he's not an elite player. I think if this was last year's quarterback class, he probably falls into the 20s. I think he's only going this high because of how thin this class is, but we'll talk more about him later on, and when we get into the draft prospects and stuff, when we start talking about number 9. But going back to, the decisions they're making with that defensive line, you're looking at teams now that start in a shotgun with 3 wides, 4-man fronts and odd man fronts work better, especially with mobile quarterbacks that we have now, that you now would need to have big nickels. So you can't put 4 linebackers out there, but you put 3 linebackers out there and a good cover corner and a linebacker that can run with these2quarterbacks. Now the 3-4 starts making more sense. So it's just that's just how I look at those guys. So I'm really curious about how the nose tackle and the edge rushers play out in this draft, because I think those are the top priorities, and I think this draft is going to be heavy on defensive players, because I honestly think they're going to want to win the way Dennis Allen thought he could win with defense. Your offense runs the ball. Your offense is low risk at the moment. And ball control until you start getting more weapons onto the offensive side, but the defense has to be redone. You got too many old people. You got too much that needs to be turned over, especially now that you've got a whole new system. It's just how I see it.
Yeah, and I've said this 100% all along. Especially once the coaching staff was in place. You look at the offensive side. Kellen Moore has mostly assistants that he has worked with in the past, and in a couple cases, I worked with for years and years. So, this staff is going to scheme an offense, and they're not altogether without talent. You still have Alvin Kamara.
Mhm.
You obviously have confidence in Juwan Johnson if you re-signed him, and you have a great game-breaking duo in Shaheed and Olave. A very good tackle in Fuaga, a serviceable one in Penning, and a good center in McCoy. Those are some pieces on the offense. Defensively, you got old fast. You haven't been able to sack the quarterback from the edge position in 3 years now, and
You can't tackle.
you can't tackle. And you look at it statistically, this is a defense that finished 30th overall and last against the run, in average per rush. Now you have a whole new scheme, and you need specific pieces for that scheme. You have to go defense. So no, Paulson Adebo walks out the door. I'm hoping they sign Asante Samuel. If you don't, then I think you almost have to draft Will Johnson if he's there at number 9. We've talked about edge rusher, drafting an edge rusher. We've talked about nose tackle. We haven't talked about linebacker, a legitimate off-ball linebacker, which I think is a real need. Jahad Campbell, Walker from Alabama. I have a draft crush on Huggins from Iowa. He's an absolute monster. It reminds me of Demario Davis when I watch his film. Might be the black and gold uniform too. I don't know. I think they have to get a linebacker too, not only in the draft, but I expect them to grab one in free agency that's either played for Brandon Staley or played in a system a la Vic Fangio's system. That's going to be familiar with what Staley wants to do. Denzel Perryman's still out there. Troy Reeder is still out there. Oren Burks is still out there. All those guys have either played for Staley or played in Fangio's 3-4 system.
Well, looking at last year's team and their statistics, the old quote from John McKay coming to mind. Our offensive line didn't block well. We made up for it by not tackling. So I mean, that's been the problem with this team. The offensive line doesn't block very well, doesn't open running lanes consistently, and our defense can't tackle. You watch that Buccaneers game, the one played in the Dome, that had to have been one of the worst tackling performances I've seen
ever.
Probably going back to before Sean Payton, probably going back to Jim Haslett era. Just how shoddy the tackling was. So to me, you've got to get better. You got to get better tacklers. You got to get more disciplined guys that, but a lot of them also are guys that are undrafted guys, undrafted college free agents. You need to get some legitimate first and second round guys in that linebacking core. I think you've got some good pieces, but I think the longer guys like Anthony Orji are out there, it's not a good thing. It doesn't work. And Brian, I would agree with that, except he did develop cornerbacks and safeties well. Bob, did I lose you? I don't. Is it me?
It's me. It's not you.
Okay. I just heard you. So. It wouldn't be a show if we didn't have audio problems.
How about now? Can you hear me?
I hear you fine. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Can't hear me at all?
Let me log out and log right back in.
Okay. No, and Brian, was the most shocking of all. Jim Haslett was a former linebacker player, former linebacker coach, and defensive coordinator before he became head coach, and his linebackers were shit. I mean, they really were. I've never seen somebody go through so many bad linebackers. So, yeah, some guys, Dennis Allen was good in the secondary, but he couldn't develop linebackers worth a damn. I don't know what's the key, because I haven't seen great linebackers since those guys that I got on my TV screen. 4 good linebackers like that, and that's Vic Fangio there. So I don't know. I would do anything to get good linebackers again. You guys all hear me okay, though, right? You're not having trouble with my audio, are you? Just let me know if you are. Okay, Bob's back.
Yeah, Alan, it's me. It's not you.
Okay.
I got about 10 minutes of battery left tops.
Okay.
My microphone and everything else is starting to go, so that's what's happening.
Okay, so you're going to pull a George Costanza. It's not me, it's you. Yeah, it's not you, it's me. I got you.
All right, going out on a high note. That's it, guys. I'm out of here.
There you go. George is getting mad. So let's talk about the last guy real quick, because I know. Good, Brian. I'm glad everybody can hear us, because sometimes I'm not sure if I'm just talking to empty air. Okay, so let's talk about the last guy. This was a signing I really like. Kid from Louisiana, comes from a Super Bowl team, a winning program. We are kind of becoming the New Orleans Chiefs, which is not a bad thing. But I did like this signing a lot. I think this guy really can fill the replacement and exceed the replacement of Will Harris. How do you feel about that signing?
Yeah, I don't think Justin Reed is as versatile as Will Harris. Will Harris could drop down and play the slot. You don't want Justin Reed doing that. But Reed does have good range on the back end. He's experienced. He's a good instinctive player. And he's a short tackler. We both talked about safety being a need for this team coming into the offseason. That was with or without Will Harris. I still think safety is a need, but with Reed, you have a legitimate, experienced starter, so you don't necessarily have to address the safety now. I never thought they were going to do it in free agency. I did think some people had them projected to draft Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia. A couple other people, the safety from Texas. I had him in my first mock draft, drafting Xavier Watts, the safety from Notre Dame, who I love. I still think any of those guys are possible, but I don't think it's an absolute must now. I think you can get away with a duo of Tyrann Mathieu and Justin Reed back there if you add another cornerback. Point being, before my microphone started going out, and I'm starting to go fuzzy again, so it wouldn't surprise me if I conked out again. You lose both Paulson Adebo and Will Harris. Your safety was already a need, like we said, with or without Will Harris. You have to bring in either a starting caliber cornerback or a top tier third safety. One of those two is a must, but you don't have to do them both.
Yeah, and I agree. I think you can get away with those guys. I still think you need to bring one in a draft class, but it's now a day 3 position. It's no longer day 1, day 2. It's more important to upgrade the Saints front 7 right now and the offensive line and get a couple more skilled players. But once again, just like the theme of the entire show, you're putting bodies in place so you have more flexibility going into the draft than you had without those guys, and you're going, oh my God, I need to get a safety. Oh my God, I need to get a receiver. Oh my God, I need to get a tight end. Oh my God, I need a tackle. I need a defensive tackle because we can't stop the run with the guys that we have. So, all those things. Yeah. And I agree. I mean, Howden just is not turning out to be the kind of safety you need him to be. No. So, he's not a starter. He's a special teams guy. You still need to get younger there. but this just gives you more flexibility, so you don't have to reach for somebody right away. Last question before we talk about the Bayou Blitz. Who's left out there or position wise that you want to see the Saints bring in over the next few days?
I'm with Brian. You still need to upgrade the interior offensive line. I'm looking at Mekhi Becton there. I'd still, so that way you don't have to draft a cornerback on day 1 or day 2. I'd love to see him get a Sunday Samuel. Those are my 2 specific wishes. And I already said that I from the start, I 100% expect the Saints to bring in a linebacker, an off-ball linebacker that's either played for Staley or played in a system that he is going to run. Denzel Perryman, Troy Reeder had great success with Staley. Oren Burks played for Vic Fangio last year as a backup who got a lot of playing time in Philadelphia. So one of those guys. A wide receiver possibility, not a must. Watch the waiver wires to see if the Rams release Cooper Kupp.
I want him.
If they do, and I'm Kellen Moore, I am calling Cooper Kupp 25 times an hour, until he says yes. If it's not Cooper Kupp, another guy I'd love to see in New Orleans is Tyler Boyd. Great success in Cincinnati as a 2B guy. Not as much success in Tennessee, but you look at their awful quarterback situation. Again, you bring in a Tyler Boyd or Robert Woods is out there. Both you and I are fans of Robert Woods. You bring in a Cooper Kupp. None of those guys have to be your number 1.
No.
They could be a 1B, along with Chris Olave. Makes Rashid Shaheed even more dangerous. And you're not going to break the bank to sign any of these guys. Even Kupp, who would be a little bit pricier, even Kupp's not going to break your salary cap. So, Tyler Boyd, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. I'd love to see any of those guys in New Orleans.
An ex-Charger, right? Keenan Allen, another one. I mean, I know, Brian, he has been hurt, but he also has been healthy, and the Rams are clearly moving away from him. You're looking at a guy to be – so when another concussion hits Olave, you're not going to the street and pulling up guys like MVS and guys like that. Pettis is a special teams kind of guy. I just I like Kupp as a guy on your team while you also draft a receiver too. But again, a body just in case you get in a situation where there's a run on receivers and you're not panicking going, I got to trade up to get a guy because I'm not going to get a guy if I don't trade up. I get that. I just don't want I'm not a guy. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm desperate. Yeah. Okay. And that's what I'm always afraid of. I'm afraid of being stuck somewhere where I'm desperate because I have a hole, and we have a hole at the 3rd wide receiver position. So I'd love to trade Olave, but I don't know what you get for him. I really don't know.
You said it a couple weeks ago. Chris Olave's value is at its lowest right now. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised to see the Saints pick up Olave's 5th-year option. They would have to make that decision before the beginning of May, because that gives you more time to make a decision. Where if Olave has a really good season next year and stays healthy, but you don't want to pay that price tag, you trade him then. But if you trade him now, you're not going to get any kind of value for him.
Right. So, I mean, I know we have a need, but I don't know if we can get Tet. But the kid from Ole Miss, there's a bunch of kids out there I like in the receiver. That's why I want an extra 2nd-round pick, because I'd love to, double dip, give me a defensive guy and a receiver at the same time, or give me a running back, receiver, edge rusher, all in the first 3 picks. I'd love that, but we'll see. I agree with everything you said. The only other name I'd throw in there, because I've had a hard on for this guy. This is a heterosexual man crush, but the kid from the 49ers, they're letting go, the fullback. Oh my God.
I saw that.
When I saw the release, I'm like, sign him. I don't give a damn how old he is. Sign his ass, because I am tired of seeing fullbacks with stone hands. Yeah. I am just sick of it. I miss my wheel route where the fullback comes out of the backfield and we can dump it off. Oh my God. Just he only has to play a handful of snaps. I just want him. We spent no, you're talking about trading Olave. Even if we had Mahomes, Hurts, Jackson, any of them, because concussions are concussions. Once you start getting concussions, you're more susceptible. Defenses know it. That the one that took him out for the year, 4 flags came out because he launched himself into Olave. Teams know it. They'll take the penalty. I'll take the fine, but I'll get him out the game.
Yep.
So that's how I would be thinking too as a defensive player. So it's just, that's my attitude when it comes to concussions. I'm sorry. I get it, and I hate it that it happened to him. But yeah, it's just, once you start getting concussions, it just happens. Look at Kurt Warner. Look at Kurt Warner, another example. Guys know it. They're going to take him out. Okay, so that went on longer than I planned. But Bayou Blitz this week. What do you have coming up?
We're going tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Central Time. So back at our regularly scheduled day and time, we think. Provided something is coming, something doesn't come up. We call it free agency frenzy for a reason, folks. Over the last 2 days, I have written 16 articles by myself. John Hendricks has nearly duplicated that. And we expect the news to keep coming in. We think the Saints are all done with restructures, except for the possibility of maybe Taysom Hill. Is another one to look at if they want to clear a little bit more salary cap space. So you're going to start to see these mid-tier free agent guys now coming off the board, not just for the Saints, but other teams as well. We talked about some of the possibilities, names and/or positions that we expect the Saints to target next. New Orleans ain't done, folks, and anybody that was going, giving us the yearly BS about the Saints aren't going to be able to afford anyone. My response to you all was just, is this your first day on earth? Because this is what the Saints have done for the last decade and a half, 15 plus years. You might hate Mickey Loomis, but the one thing that man will do for you that man and his staff will do for you every single year is clear you salary cap space. That's what happened. Now we'll just keep our fingers crossed to see if the Saints bring in the right players.
Yeah, and again, like I started to show off, we're projected. I haven't looked since we've started adding players. I'll see more as the week goes on, but we're projected to be $56 million under the cap next year. That's including the restructuring of Carr. And next year, I think we're 2027. We're projected to be over $100 million under the cap. That's what happens when you don't have a lot of good players. You're not signing guys. That's why the Patriots have all this money to spend. Mm-hmm. Because they don't have any good players on the team that that they need to extend. So we're getting to the end. But yeah, I still think there's a couple more mid-tier players they're going to sign. I'm looking for the guard. That's the next one they have to get. Get a guard, and then look at receiver. Fullback maybe if he's cheap enough. I don't know what the demand is for him. That kind of stuff. But I think if you fill by putting bodies in, it doesn't preclude you from taking them in the draft. It just makes it so you don't have to get a guy here. You can weigh decisions and not trade up, because that's one thing the Saints can't do is trade up. They need to trade back. They need to trade back because we need more bodies. We need more young players. So anyway, Brian, I don't know about Taysom Hill. It's his last year, 35 years old. I don't know what you get for him. You know, 1 year deal, $10 million. It's a lot of money to eat, and he's 35, coming off a major injury. It may be too late to trade Taysom Hill, but yeah, it does seem that Mickey's going out with a bang. Speaking of going out with a bang, Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. Bob hopefully will have more of a phone charge, and then he'll have more rest. But he's got his draft stuff coming out next too.
Mhm.
So, I do not know that. I have not seen anything on that yet, Calvin. So,
He did. I forget who. I thought I saw it was a 2-year deal though. Man, I don't. It happened about an hour and a half before we went on the air.
Okay.
Something came across.
yeah, I have not seen. It's coming fast and furious because of the tampering period. So, we'll see. We'll see as the week goes on, and we'll talk about some more next week. So, in the meantime, thank you guys for all joining in on this. Sorry about last weekend, Mardi Gras. Bob wasn't feeling good the whole bit. I'm wearing him out now. So, in the meantime, we'll see you next week and Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
I know.